Right, hello and welcome. And I think that's still a little loud in the background. That's better. Now, who have we got? Joan, hello, and Veronica, and Kathleen, and Barry, and Mary Lou. Welcome. Joanne. The early comers, the early risers. Joan, you're right, it's 62 degrees. It's outrageous considering we had snow the other day. But I'm not complaining. I think it's very nice. You may have noticed I've moved. I'll explain why in a minute, when more people join us. But it's a beautiful day out there. Again, 2020 really does have its moments, and this fall is one of them, or several of them. Leaves are in abundance this year. One of the blessings of where I live is that they send round this big hoover to suck up all the leaves off the street, which I think is really nice of them. Especially when you've raked all your own leaves onto the street and cheating. People are late today, and an awful lot of people have signed up for today's webinar. Where are they all? It's outrageous. More coming in. James, hello. And John Henry. And John from Scott. Yes, I'll talk about the beautiful bouquet in a moment. Yes, indeed, Michelle, I will be teaching OSHA next term. Hello, Grace. Yes, I wouldn't miss my OSHA class. Good heavens, no. I'll be talking about another Shakespeare in that one. Or those four, I think. I'm doing 4 classes. It's 4 or 5. Hello, Robert in Fort Lauderdale. Yes, Twelfth Night is one of those plays that, you're right, I did not see the Lincoln Center production, but it's one of those plays that impinges on everybody's memory when they see it. And as far as I recall, it was the first Shakespeare I ever did as a lad, in which I played Fabian. And Fabian is so important a role that it's very often cut. And but it survived, and I survived it, and it survived me. Hello, Ed and Bobby. Alton, welcome. And Judy. What you're listening to, by the way, is an album called The Music of the Troubadours. It's not actually Shakespearean. This music was already about 300 years old when Shakespeare was a lad. But I rather like it. And it's got a nice period feel to it. And what you're listening to is the original English bagpipe, which was a very small instrument, not like the big Scottish one that makes such a, dare I say, terrible noise, in comparison to the Irish one, the uilleann pipe, which is sweetness itself. But this is the English bagpipe. Joke from Haarlem in the Netherlands, welcome. I didn't see you last week, but welcome. It's good to see you this week. That music, it'd make you want to get up and dance, wouldn't it? Well, not me, but you might want to. Feel free to dance while we're waiting to begin. Hello, Nancy and Martha. Oh, dear. Yeah, like I say, everybody seems to have, anybody who's had anything to do with Shakespeare seems to have a memory of Twelfth Night. I'm going to set out to destroy those memories today. No, I don't mean that. Well, maybe. We shall see. Ah, Toby, yes. Yes, I did go on at a later point to play Malvolio in a much bigger and better production, but I never played Toby Belch. It was a great shame. I think it's part more suited to my, shall we say, physical appearance and tendency towards a little indigestion. Who have we got? Marianne and Barb from Irwin, welcome. Hello, Edmund in Florida. How is it down in Florida? Has all the rain stopped? I presume it's pleasant again now. It's always generally pleasant in Florida, the weather. Good afternoon to you, Susan. And Sarah. Yes, Dennis. Greatness one trusts will be thrust upon you. Not having been born great, I just hope that I can achieve greatness. Well, that's the one thing we all wish for, isn't it? Let's achieve a little greatness. Ah, yes, very pleasant now. Much more improved since the hurricanes have passed over. Like the angel of death. Well, we're getting close. We'll make a start in a second or two. Amazing to think that music there is about 600 years old and eminently listenable to. Dear goodness me. It's delightful. Hello, William from Warren. Yes, thank you, Dennis. Hello, Pat. Welcome back. Joanne. I think the whole family is beginning to gather together now. There's always a few stragglers. Hello, Mark from Rochester. You see, the family is gathering in ere the winter storms begin. Amy, also from Dithridge Street. Quite a few fans in that area. Hello, Bill and Joan. Let's have a look at the time. Well, we've just gone 2 o'clock. I think we might make a start now. So I will reduce the delightful 600-year-old music and let's get going. Now, before we begin, as usual, a couple of small announcements. As you may see, I have moved slightly that way. And the reason being, our sponsor for this program and indeed next week's webinar is Hepatica, the most remarkable and wonderful florists up here in Regent Square. And not only did they sponsor the 2 programs, but they sent that stunning bouquet that you see behind me. They're wonderful florists. And if you're ever looking for flowers, go to Hepatica. This is not an advertisement. This is a genuine recommendation. And as you can see, that thing, I keep pointing in the wrong direction, is a beautiful composition. They do beautiful flower arrangements. They don't just do flowers, they do stunning flower arrangements. So I cannot recommend them highly enough. And thank you to them for sponsoring this program, this webinar, and next week's as well. Bless you. And as I always remind you, if you're interested in sponsoring a webinar, it's not that expensive. Send us an email. give us your details. We'll get back to you and we'll arrange a date or a program that would suit your taste, a topic that I'm going to talk about or that one of my guests is going to talk about. So we're in Regent Square, actually on Braddock Avenue in Regent Square. And they're absolutely brilliant. So I do recommend them. That's enough advertising, but I had to say it because I really mean it. They're brilliant. They're wonderful. So today's topic and next week's topic is Twelfth Night. And it comes under the category of Alan is going to tell you what he thinks about Shakespeare. And as usual, I'm not going to tell you the story or go through the play monotonously. I want to talk about a particular topic within the play, because Twelfth Night falls into a certain category of Shakespeare's plays, in fact, several. It is one of his comedies. It is one of a particular group of comedies. I'll come to that in a minute. But before I do, I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to begin by giving you a quote from the play. And it is not a quote from any of the principal characters. It is from Feste, the fool, the clown, the jester. And it is a song. And the song goes, "What is love? 'Tis not hereafter. Present mirth hath present laughter. What's to come is still unsure. In delay there lies no plenty. Then come kiss me, sweet and twenty. Youth's a stuff will not endure." I'll come back to that. Now, Twelfth Night is probably the most complex of Shakespeare's lighter comedies. Now, that category of comedies covers an awful lot, from the dark plays and what are, the complex and difficult plays like Cymbeline and various others. But the light comedies, or this particular group of comedies, of this group, Twelfth Night's the most complex. As I say, I'm not going to tell you the whole plot. It's just my opinion of what I think one can find in the play if one goes looking for it. And as I always say at just about every webinar I give, everything I tell you may be wrong. It's just my opinion. And if you don't agree with me, write and tell me, and I'll get back to you. Shakespeare had a somewhat jaundiced view of love. Anytime Shakespeare deals with love, it's never easy. The course of true love never did run smooth. So Shakespeare uses love, which is the most common emotion next to hate that we all feel. And hate is just an absence of love. And so when he addresses it, there is always a complexity to it. It is never just simple, and it is seldom romantic. There is one play where it is a little bit romantic, and I'll mention it in a second. But all of his plays, all of these plays that concern themselves with love have a complexity. It's as though in each of these plays, he said to himself, well, what does it mean? What is love? First words of that song. And as I say, generally he would be somewhat jaundiced in his view of it. It is love that breeds pain and love that breeds betrayal. For instance, in his play Troilus and Cressida, a love story of sorts, you might call it an anti-Romeo and Juliet in that sense. Troilus loves Cressida, Cressida loves or ostensibly loves Troilus. Cressida gets sent off to the Greeks out of Troy and immediately behaves, or rather misbehaves, with just about every Greek general that's available. She betrays the love and breaks the heart. It's a very jaundiced view of love. Also, Shakespeare loved the complexity of relationships. None of the loving relationships were ever simple, except one, perhaps, in As You Like It, which was the relationship of Oliver and Celia. But most of the time, all the love relationships are incredibly complex. And he likes to build on that and play with that and make discoveries about the nature of love within those complexities. Very often, lovers are portrayed as the victim of circumstance. Romeo and Juliet is the classic example of that, the two young lovers who are just teenagers who really fancy one another and want to, and she won't let him unless they get married. And then this stupid priest and this rather self-regarding nurse make sure that A, it happens, and B, that they cover the tracks. And of course, the lovers end up dead. If that isn't a jaundiced view of love, I do not know what is. You also got something like All's Well That Ends Well, where a woman loves a man and has to go in search of him. She becomes the victim of circumstance in order to prove and to regain the love that she wants. So he doesn't like it simple. He likes it complex. In other words, if it was simple, it wouldn't be interesting and we wouldn't be watching these plays after 400 years. His own experience, Shakespeare's own experience of love and marriage was, to say the least, full of circumstance. In as far as we know, he loved, or he married anyway, or he was involved with an older woman. She became with child, as they say in all the nice literature. He ran away. I think it was her brothers made him come back and marry her. They had more than one child, but they never truly lived together. He lived away in London. She lived in Stratford. The relationship was, shall we say, fraught. And he did leave her, as we know, his second best bed, kept the best one for whoever he was sleeping with at the time, probably. He was also fascinated as a writer with what we would now call farce, this complexity of situation where relationship builds on relationship and relationship depends on strange things happening. And when everything seems safe, something else happens to make it complex again. We now call that farce. Shakespeare wouldn't even have heard of the word, but he loved that complexity. And plays like for instance, the Comedy of Errors, one of Shakespeare's, I think it is his shortest play, quite early, and one of the cleverest farces ever written. I mean, Feydeau would have been proud to write Comedy of Errors. And also, he was fascinated very often by the use of twins. He liked twins. When you have twins in a play, you can create all sorts of confusions. And confusion builds the complexity. He uses twins in Comedy of Errors. In fact, he doesn't just use one pair of twins in Comedy of Errors, he uses two pairs of twins in Comedy of Errors. He likes complexity upon complexity. And of course, Twelfth Night depends, the denouement of Twelfth Night depends on the fact that there are twins. Now, they're meant to be identical, but considering one is a girl and one is a boy, that's rather difficult to imagine. So shall we simply say they are twins? But they both look very much alike, and without that, the plot doesn't work. Twelfth Night is a play of confusions and cruelty, tremendous cruelty. I'm not going to deal with that side of it this week. That's what I'm going to talk about next week. But just like its counterpart, and I'd like to call it the counterpart, As You Like It, it is a play about love. I didn't say loving, I said love, about the topic of love. And it comes back to the first line of that song I quoted at the beginning. What is love? This play is not necessarily about romantic love, as I said. It's far more about what love appears to be. And that we love the idea of love much more than we actually love the reality of love. The reality of love can get very sticky and icky and unpleasant, and you have rows, and somebody has to do the dishes, and somebody has to go out to work, and somebody has to get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby. But the idea of love is infinitely more attractive. We love being in love. That, I think, may be the message of the play. Both plays, As You Like It and Twelfth Night, were written around the same time. I think As You Like It was around 1599, Twelfth Night 1602. I can be corrected, I'm not sure, but I think that was around the date. So they were written in a very tight period. Same period, he also wrote Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. And love was the main theme of all these plays. And each of them take a somewhat absurd, if not one would say, outright cynical view on the nature of lovers. For instance, Midsummer Night's Dream, which many of you may have seen when we presented it in the early part of this year, before COVID struck us down. Midsummer Night's Dream has lovers changing partners while influenced by a drug. You might call it loving under the influence, for which they can't touch you unless they know what the drug is. But it is, again, a cynical view of love in that once affected, they will change partners randomly, and it doesn't seem to matter who's with who at one point. Very cynical view. Much ado about nothing concerns the eventual bringing together of a perfectly matched but highly resistant pair of long-term bickering lovers. It is a game of love playing involving the worst thing in the world, people who are very nearly past it. As You Like It is a story of how love works in 4 different processes. You've got romantic love, you've got idyllic love, you've got love at first sight, and you definitely have carnal love involved there as well. And on top of that, there's a little bit of homoerotica thrown in just for good measure, which he also does in Twelfth Night. So he's looking at love as an entity. He's trying to say, what is it? What actually is this thing that we keep talking about? And it is the jester, the fool, Feste, who poses the question in that song. So let's just take a look at it. What is he singing? What is love? Well, that's the fundamental question of the play. What is love? We all say it. We all often do it. Some of us do it for, one who loves not wisely but too often, which God knows has been said of me. What actually is it? We talk about it, we say it, we express it, but what is it? Nobody can simply define it in a single sentence. Can't be done. But he goes on, 'tis not hereafter. It's not about what might happen in the future. The only love we can be truly conscious of is now. It is about now, what I am feeling. I don't know what I'll feel tomorrow. I'm not sure, I probably can't remember at my age, what I felt like yesterday, but I know what it feels like now. What is love? It's not hereafter, it's now. Present mirth hath present laughter. What you feel good about now makes you happy now. It is in the moment. What's to come is still unsure. So in other words, no matter what you feel, no matter what your emotions are, no matter how you may feel and how you may think you may feel tomorrow, you don't know, because circumstances can change. And when circumstances, you are the victim of circumstance. And when circumstances, the classic thing, everything seems hunky-dory and then stuff happens. So Shakespeare understood that 400 years ago, and it probably Sophocles understood that 2,500 years ago. Aristophanes understood it. It is part of the human condition. Frailty, thy name is human. He goes on, in delay there lies no plenty. Let's get on with it now. If you wait, you may lose it. So why wait? Then come kiss me, sweet and 20. Come on, baby, let's do it now. Because youth's a stuff will not endure. Do it while you still can. Get on with it now. Love, loving now. Because tomorrow, it's the old eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Well, eat, drink, be merry, and do the other thing while you still can. There's another point about this play. The women in all of these plays seem very eager to hold off the hoped-for conclusion. And for some, that holding pattern seems to be almost eternal. They are waiting forever for whatever it is to happen. They are assuming that they can keep playing the game. I always describe it as they've developed the skill of go away a little closer. In other words, I don't want you, I do not want you, I do not want you. Where are you going? A lot of the women in Shakespeare's plays play that game extremely well, and one suspects that Shakespeare had an awful lot of experience in his own life about that kind of relationship. There's a lot of talking about love, pledges of love, wooing and pursuing, but not a lot of evidence of actual, true loving or being in love, as we would like to define it. Everybody talks about it. Everybody says they feel it, but we hardly ever in the whole course of this play actually see the actuality of love. What I'm suggesting is that if ever there was a play about infatuation, this is it. The main lady object of love in Twelfth Night is a classic avoider of loving contact. And the main man, Orsino, appears to be somewhat impatient in a sense. To give an example of what I'm talking about here, Andrew Marvell, who lived about 50 years after Shakespeare, 40 odd years after Shakespeare, who wrote a poem. It's one of my favorites of that period. It's called To His Coy Mistress. And he begins it, "Had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day." But as Shakespeare says, in delay there lies no plenty. Marvell is echoing that. He goes on, the middle stanza of that poem. "But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity. And your quaint honour turn to dust and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace." And it comes back to Feste's particular point. In delay there lies no plenty. Then come kiss me, sweet and 20. Youth's a stuff we'll not endure. If we don't get on with it now, we never will. So that's another proposition that Shakespeare is setting up. You have Olivia saying, "No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to." You have Orsino saying, "I really want to. I really want to." You have Viola saying, "I wish I could. I wish I could." You have Sebastian saying, "Yes, I will. Yes, I will." This game, this complexity of a game is being played all the time around this simple proposition. If you want to do it now, because you may not get another chance. The vexed question for Shakespeare, to use another allusion, seems to be a recurring one, and it's written in the words of Cole Porter's song. What is this thing called love? With regards to this particular play, I suppose we might ask of the characters not who do they love, but rather what do they love? The very first moment of the play is a statement concerning that main topic. Orsino opens the play right on topic. "If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. If music feeds my love, let me hear it and hear it and hear it and hear it until I'm so sick of it I never do it again." We learn immediately, of course, through that Orsino, who is our hero, is a glutton for love, whatever that may mean. It goes on, "That strain again, it had a dying fall. Oh, it came o'er my ear like the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving odor." I think he should have been a poet rather than a duke, because he's so fascinated by the idea, the words, the descriptions, without actually getting involved in the actualities. He's very, what I'm saying is he's completely infatuated with the very idea of love, and for love which cannot be obtained, the love of a woman who has vowed not to love. What a perfect match. He can pine away in the delight of being in a state of forever suffering for a love that can never be gratified. He can indulge himself to his heart's content in the idea, I love, and it is unrequited. She loves me not. He can go on like that for years. The music, as it were, will go on and on and on. And so will the frustration. But I would propose, because I'm naughty, it might be argued that in Orsino's case, frustration is actually a part of the delight he feels in the vexed question of loving Olivia. Goes on again. When mine eyes did see Olivia first, methought she purged the air of pestilence. That instant was I turned into a hart, and my desires like fell and cruel hounds ere since pursue me. He sees himself as a hart, which is a stag. And he's being hunted by his own desires. His own desires are bringing him low. His desires are, in fact, more potent than any possible victory over Olivia. He rather enjoys the metaphor. He sees himself as the victim of love, the victim of his desires. His desire is love. I'm not even talking about sexual love. I'm talking about the idea of what love feels like. Anyway. Now, she is most definitely playing hard to get. She's playing a game as well. Orsino's servant Valentine tells us that. He says about her, the element itself, till 7 years heat, that's the sun, shall not behold her face at ample view, shall stay inside. But like a cloistress will she veiled walk, and water once a day her chamber round with eye-offending brine. All this to season a brother's dead love, which she would keep fresh and lasting in her sad remembrance. She's going to behave like a nun. She's going to shield herself from the daylight. She's going to spend all day crying for 7 years because her brother is dead. She really must have loved that brother. Or else she's playing a game with Orsino, a catch me if you can game. Because the way that she is described, the language that is used by the servant to describe what Olivia is doing is so poetic. Like a cloistress will she veiled walk, and water once a day her chamber round with eye-offending brine. All this to season a dead brother's love. Look at that, eye-offending brine, salty tears. To season, salt, season. They're playing wonderful word games here. It's glorious. It's rubbish, but it's glorious rubbish. She may say that she objects to the proffered love from Orsino, but she keeps listening to it. And then there's Viola. Now, she is a girl. That may seem obvious, but for most of the play, everyone thinks she's a boy. There's a reason for this, by the way. Just a little aside here, that the breeches roles. One of the theories, and I hold to it, is that, as we know, that all the women in Elizabethan times were played by boys. And good boy actors were wonderful, but one of the problems that happened to good boy actors is puberty. And eventually their voices wouldn't quite be able to maintain the high notes for a girl. So very often it is believed that Shakespeare would, when he had a good boy actor, would write a role in which the girl spent most of the play dressed as a boy, so that you wouldn't notice the fact that the voice was a bit wrong, and then only became a woman at the end of the play. And that happens in As You Like It, and it happens in Twelfth Night. It happens for Rosalind, it happens for Viola. So it's known as a breeches role, and that principle carried on through English theatre for a very, very long time. In fact, classic Victorian, Edwardian, and even present day pantomimes in England, very often the principal boy is played by a girl dressed as a boy. I've never understood quite why, except if they've got great legs. But anyway, so Viola, come back to her, she's been in a shipwreck. She too has lost a brother in the shipwreck. And on discovering where she is, she's very practical. She's in Illyria, which, by the way, is probably the Balkans, sort of somewhere around Albania, irrelevant, on the Adriatic, which is rather nice. She needs security because she's only a girl, bless her. So she asks about who the rulers are, and the captain who brought her ashore tells her. She learns all about Orsino and Olivia. The captain describes her. It says, the Duke is called Orsino, and she asks who he is. She's heard about him. And the captain tells her that, he's the Duke, and there's a rumor going around that he's seeking the love of the fair Olivia. And Viola says, who's she? A virtuous maid, the daughter of a count that died some 12 months since, then leaving her in the protection of his son, her brother, who shortly also died, for whose dear love they say she has abjured the company and sight of men. Confusion already. That you have a character whose situation was bad, but she had a brother to look after her, and then the brother died. That's the building of confusions. She has abjured the company and sight of men. And Viola makes an interesting response. Oh, that I served that lady, and might not be delivered to the world till I had made mine own occasion mellow what my estate is. In other words, she's a vulnerable young woman in a country she does not know, with no friends, no acquaintances, and as far as she's concerned, her brother is dead. Now, clearly, if I were Viola, and I'm sure if you were Viola, the person I'd go and look for a job from would be Olivia, because then you'd be safe, cloistered with Olivia, seasoning the earth with her salt tears. But the next time we see her, Viola, she's not Viola, she's Cesario, a servant to Orsino. She has dressed up as a boy and decided to go to work, not for the woman who will keep her cloistered, but for the Duke, who is love-obsessed. Now, interestingly, Shakespeare doesn't waste time here. We don't see the arrival of Viola. We don't see her explaining herself, having dressed as a boy and convincing that she needs a job. The next moment we see her, because that arrival is totally unimportant as far as Shakespeare is concerned, his main theme is about love, the nature of it. What matters, as far as Shakespeare is concerned, and what we see, is that he, stroke she, Cesario, stroke Viola, is there in Orsino's court, and that Orsino has taken him, stroke her, completely into his confidence. Indeed, he trusts Cesario completely. I mean, out of the blue. As I say, Shakespeare's not wasting time. He's not interested in the niceties of that storytelling. It's not about reality, it's about the nature of love. He says to Cesario, and never forget, Cesario is Viola, thou knowest no less but all, I have unclasped to thee the book even of my secret soul. Wow. Therefore, good youth, address thy gate unto her, be not denied access, stand at her doors and tell them, there thy fixed foot shall grow till thou have audience. In other words, he's got this young guy, comes into the court, and he thinks, oh, you're nice, you're bright. Let me tell you everything about me and how much I love this woman. I think the evidence is there that Orsino is much more interested in talking about his feelings and his emotions than he is about personally doing anything about them. Because at no point does Orsino go and knock on Olivia's door and say, stop this, come on, let's go out and have dinner. No, at no point. Just keep sending other people to do it. Viola, Cesario, being quite sensible, says, sure, my noble lord, if she be so abandoned to her sorrow as it is spoke, she won't let me in. And he says, try harder. Be clamorous and leap all civil bounds, rather than make unprofited return. Leap all civil bounds. Be rude. And if I do get to speak with her, what do I do then? Unfold the passion of my love. Surprise her with discourse of my dear faith. It shall become thee well to act my woes. Act my woes. She will attend it better in thy youth than an nuncio of more grave aspect. In other words, Tell her all the things I feel. Why doesn't he do it himself? Because he doesn't really want an immediate result. He wants to enjoy and indulge in the suffering of the lover. It's surface, surface. All is surface. It's all the game of wooing, the game of compliments, the game of being in love. And then Orsino notices something. Well, he probably noticed it before. When Viola says, I don't think it's going to work, he says, of course it will. For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man. Now, he's been sending old fellas like himself. Suddenly he sees this, dare I say, beautiful young boy. Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious. Thy small pipe is as the maiden's organ, shrill and sound, and all is semblative of a woman's part. I know thy constellation is right apt for this affair. I think what he is suggesting is that because the boy is young and very pretty, that Olivia will be much more inclined to listen to him and talk to him. He notices that the boy is somewhat effeminate. So he will send him, the boy, wooing on his behalf, a surrogate lover. It's a new game in this eternal challenge. It seems to be more about, in this sense, weakening Olivia's resolve than winning her heart. And he's using a pretty boy to do it. It's a kind of game. It's a sort of chess game. So where is love in all of this? If it were love, why isn't he doing it himself? Shakespeare, and the same is true of Olivia. Olivia is playing a similar game. As I say, it's that go away a little closer game. Shakespeare gives us a little more insight into the mind of Olivia through her fool, or jester. That's Feste. Now remember that in Shakespeare, the fool is there to tell the truth, always. Fool is the I suppose the ambassador of truth, the carrier of the truth. And Feste is one of Shakespeare's very clever fools, like Lear's fool, or Touchstone in As You Like It. Feste is the one who tends to see the truth behind the self-delusion of his employer. When we were talking about Lear, we talked about that Lear's fool always told the truth, always reminded Lear that he was lying to himself. In this sense, Feste does the same with Olivia. If you look at this very brief conversation, Olivia's annoyed with Feste. She accuses him of dishonesty and drinking and being just basically a waste of space. And Feste responds with regard to that accusation, "Too false, Madonna, that drink and good counsel will amend. Forgive the dry fool drink, then is the fool not dry. Bid the dishonest man mend himself. If he mend, he is no longer dishonest. So stop telling me rubbish, miss. And fix anything." It's a very reasonable point. Anything, he goes on, that's mended is but patched. Virtue that transgresses is but patched with sin, and sin that amends is but patched with virtue. He speaks the truth, but he's also commenting on Olivia herself. Carries on to the other servants. "The lady bade take away the fool, therefore I say, take her away." And she says, "I said then to take you away." And he says, "All right, let me try and prove that you're a fool. And remember, fools are all licensed. They can say what they like." So she said, "All right, get on with it. Make your proof." And he asked her a simple question, "Madonna, why mournest thou?" "Good fool, for my brother's death." "Well, I think his soul is in hell, Madonna." "I know his soul is in heaven," she says. "The more fool you, Madonna, to mourn for your brother's soul being in heaven." Take away the fool, gentlemen. Now, in that little game, which Shakespeare's audience would have found hysterically funny, what we are demonstrating, or what Shakespeare is demonstrating, is that what is said by a character is not necessarily the truth. She says she is in mourning for her brother, yet she believes her brother has gone to heaven. It's one of those great conundrums. Why do we mourn the death of somebody if we believe they have gone to their eternal reward? Surely we should be delighted. The whole notion that what you say does not necessarily mean what you believe. and what you believe does not necessarily come out in what you say. And this is all a sort of a back reference to this whole question of what is love. He's basically calling BS on Olivia's alleged grief. He knows she's using that grief just to keep out of the way of other people. It's a kind of it's a kind of private door that she's closed so that nobody can bother her, and because she is playing this game with Orsino. Virtue patched with sin, or sin patched with virtue, it's still virtue and it's still sin. It's only patched over. She wants to be wooed and wed, but just not to Orsino. When she meets Viola, or more accurately, Cesario, things change. The boy starts to use words in a way that Orsino hasn't, because Orsino hasn't even been there. And they're not Orsino's words. They are Viola's, Cesario's own words. Viola arrives, Cesario, this beautiful boy arrives and starts to talk, as he's been instructed, about Orsino, and starts to describe Orsino's feelings, his emotions. Where lies your text, says Olivia? In Orsino's bosom. In his bosom? What chapter of his bosom? To answer by the method, the first of his heart. This does sound like a load of crap, doesn't it? Oh, I've read it. It's heresy. Have you no more to say? This is the same game playing that Olivia is good at, and has been playing with Orsino's other ambassadors for a long time. But then Viola Cesario asks a question that will change the game's tactics. Olivia is usually veiled when these meetings occur, which meets the outsiders. Viola says, oh, Cesario, good madam, let me see your face. And Olivia is, have you any commission to negotiate with my face? Oh, all right, I'll show you. I will draw the curtain and show you the picture. Look, is it not well done? Now, Olivia wants the boy to see her. She knows she's hot. And she's already taken with this boy. There's something about him. In that sense, Orsino's plan is working. Unfortunately, not the way he had hoped. Viola looks at the face and says, it's excellently done. If God did all. It's a woman talking to a woman, don't forget. 'Tis in grain, sir, will endure the wind and weather, she responds. Viola, looking at her, says, in all honesty, it's true beauty truly blent, whose red and white nature owns sweet cunning hand laid on. Lady, you are the cruelest she alive, if you will lead these graces to the grave and leave the world no copy. The grave, remember Andrew Marvell's poem. What one woman is saying to the other woman, if you're that good looking, what the hell are you doing hiding yourself away? Get out and enjoy yourself. You will lead these graces to the grave and leave the world no copy. You should be married and having children and enjoying yourself. It might be suggested that Viola knows that compliments are always the way to a woman's heart, but perish the thought that I would suggest such a thing. Never. However, it does work. Olivia does think highly of herself. Olivia loves herself. What is love? Well, to a large degree, just as much as Orsino loves himself as a lover, Olivia loves herself as an object, as a person worth desiring. She is in love with her own beauty. And remember, people, and particularly Orsino, have been praising her beauty for a long time. So we're beginning to see another love here, self-love, self-adoration. Viola goes on, my master loves you. Such a love could be but recompensed, though you were crowned the nonpareil of beauty. No matter, if you were the greatest beauty in the world, he will love you. How does he love me? With adorations, fertile tears, with groans that thunder love and sighs of fire. She's back to giving the crap again. It's back to the script of Orsino. But it's not real love. It's not real expressions of love. It's just words. But ask yourself the question, of whom is she speaking in the next passage? If I did love you with my master's flame, with such a suffering, such a deadly life, in your denial I would find no sense, I would not understand it. If I loved you like he does, and you said no, I wouldn't understand. And it's a brilliant leading moment because Olivia asks the question, what would you do? And here comes one of the most beautiful declarations in Shakespeare on the topic of love. Make me a willow cabin at your gate, and call upon my soul within the house. Write loyal cantons of condemned love and sing them loud, even in the dead of night. Hallow your name to the reverberate hills and make the babbling gossip of the air cry out, Olivia. Oh, you should not rest between the elements of air and earth, but you should pity me. It's wonderful because it is so simple. It is such a simple declaration of love. I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't say this, I wouldn't say that. I would simply live at your doorstep and wait. I'd call on you. I'd write poems to you. I'd cry out your name to the hills. I'd make the babbling gossip of the air cry out. I deeply suspect that what Viola would love to say at that moment is Orsino, because she's in love. But she says, Olivia. And then she introduces a really important word. You should not rest between the elements of air and earth, but you should pity me. Viola, in the person of Cesario, has found words of love, real love that we like to think is what it means when we say that word. For who? How close is Viola to saying the word Orsino in that moment? Because she's already smitten with him. And Olivia is touched, fascinated by this, because her response went to Viola's, what would you do? I would do this. Olivia responds, you might do much. Suddenly, Olivia is attracted by the beautiful young boy who says things truthfully, simply, honestly, openly, no flamboyance. And the contrast between that speech and all the messages from Orsino that she's had to recite, you suddenly see the simplicity of a true declaration of love. But who is she making that declaration to? Olivia is affected. So much so, she does something that is completely unconventional. Confusion has entered her soul. Go you to your lord, I cannot love him. Let him send no more ambassadors. Unless perchance you come again to me and tell me how he takes it. I don't want to hear again. I don't want to see anybody again. I don't want to hear any more about this unless you come back. Something has happened to Olivia. Olivia never asks for ambassadors to come back. And there she is saying to this boy, come back. So, to ensure the return of Cesario, she sends a ring. And so we're just having a fiddle with volumes here. I'm not sure what the problem is. I just got to check something. Oh dear, technology. Yeah, having a little tiny sound problem there, but we fixed it. Where was I? Yes. So again, it's all about confusions. Suddenly, Olivia is confused about her own emotions. Viola is confused about hers. So Olivia, following in the great farcical course of things, makes sure that Viola comes back by sending her a ring, which she declares Viola left, or Cesario left, which of course he didn't, because it's all a trick. And Viola comes to another. Now this, I love this moment, because this is a wonderful classic situation where we get to the middle of a play, everything is confused, we're slightly confused, I know I am, and Viola explains where we are. I left no ring with her. What means the lady? What's she talking about? Fortune forbid my outside hath not charmed her. She made good view of me, indeed so much that methought her eyes had lost her tongue, for she did speak in starts distractedly. Viola, being a woman, recognizes that the woman looked at the boy and thought, oh, I like him. That's a problem. Physical attraction and pretty words can have a big effect on people. Realization on Viola Cesario's part, she loves me, sure, yeah. The cunning of her passion invites me in this churlish messenger. None of my lord's ring, he sent her none. I am the man. Oh my God. She realizes the truth of Olivia. If it be so, as 'tis, poor lady, she had better love a dream. The realization that Olivia has fallen in love with Cesario. Disguise, I see thou art a wickedness. Oh, that is the truest thing ever. Disguise, once you pretend to be something you are not, it's gonna get you into trouble. Disguise thou art a wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. How easy it is for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms. Alas, our frailty is the cause, not we. For such as we are made of, such we be. It's not the most complimentary statement about womankind, but we must remember it was written 400 years ago and times have changed a little since then. But it is, in Viola's terms, in Shakespeare's terms, Viola looking at a woman and realizing that frailty within a woman is a reality. So Viola reveals Cesario's dilemma. My master loves her dearly. Confession time. And I, poor monster, I am a monster because I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. But everybody thinks I'm a boy. I'm behaving like a boy. I'm dressed like a boy. I'm a monster. And I, poor monster, fond as much on him as she, mistaken, seems to dote on me. Fond, don't forget, in Elizabethan English, meant foolish. Lear says it, I am a foolish, fond old man. I'm silly. I am as silly about him as she is silly about me. What will become of this? What the hell do we do about this? As I am a man, you see, the farce is truly underway here. As I am a man, my state is desperate for my mistress' love. As I am a woman, what thriftless sighs shall poor Olivia breathe? Because I am a man, I can do nothing about how I feel. Because I am a woman, Olivia can do nothing about what she feels. This is a brilliant farcical setup. And it is a brilliant setup because it has two people potentially in love with a dream. Time, thou must untangle this, not I. It's too hard a knot for me to untie. And that is also the great principle of classic farce writing. That once you have set up the proposition, you let it unfold in its own time, and unfold it will. And that fundamentally is the essential nature of the beast. That you have a construction of a play where love is the thing that is constantly, totally, and perpetually expressed, where love is the very reason why people do anything that they do. Love, that word, constantly, over and over again. And yet, it is not love that ultimately is, true love is not what the play is about. The play is about the definition of it and the absurd things that we do in the name of it. And to run it down briefly, we're here with the dreamers, these people dreaming of love. Orsino infatuated with the idea of Olivia. Olivia infatuated with the idea of Cesario, who is in fact Viola. Viola infatuated with the idea of Orsino. It's the perfect comic love triangle. And nobody has yet actually expressed love in person to anybody. Nobody has looked at the person they love and said, I love you. Nobody has directly addressed their passionate attachment. It's all a dream of loving. It's all messages of love. It's all ideas of love. But nobody has actually walked up to somebody, looked them in the eye and said, I love you. Then there is Viola's brother, her twin, identical twin, naturally, who is in fact not dead, because if he were, there would be no denouement. One should always introduce a dead character as being alive if you want to have a bit of fun. He's been rescued from the wreck that Viola was in by another man, Antonio, and here we have another love brewing. Sebastian, the brother, explains to Antonio, the other guy, what happened and his belief that his sister is dead. If she believed he was dead, he must believe that she was dead, that she drowned in that. And Antonio, who saved Sebastian, is really upset for him, very upset for him. Sebastian then describes Viola, and it's important, this description is important. It was said she much resembled me, was yet of many accounted beautiful. Though I could not with such estimable wonder or over far believe that, yet thus far I will boldly publish her, she bore a mind that envy could not call but fair. In other words, everybody said she was beautiful, but they also said she looked like me, and I don't want to say that, but she certainly was very bright. He is in a similar condition to that which Olivia claims to be. She has lost a brother, he has lost a sister. The sister is accounted beautiful. He is accounted to be identical to her. So it therefore follows that Sebastian must be pretty good looking. Antonio, who saved him, tells him how sad he is about it. Antonio says, if you will not murder me for my love, let me be your servant. And Sebastian says no. And Antonio isn't happy about that, because Antonio has begun to realize something. The gentleness of all the gods go with thee. I have many enemies in Orsino's court, else I would be very shortly there to see thee. But come what may, I do adore thee so that danger shall seem sport, and I will go. That word adore, well, it's open to interpretation, but it does seem to me to be a rather true declaration. Antonio is willing to risk his life by following Sebastian. And though perhaps this is also a physical thing, it's an idea, but Sebastian is beautiful. He's very much at pains to point out that he and his sister are identical, and she is beautiful. Ergo, Sebastian must be beautiful. And Antonio pledges his love and is willing to risk his life. The frustration levels are growing throughout the play. The frustration that Orsino is enjoying at the beginning, the frustration that Viola feels because she has to be Cesario, and now the frustration of Antonio. It's all adding these. And when frustration happens, it's rather like a fuse to a barrel of dynamite. Once that fuse is lit, something's going to blow. Viola is becoming positively desperate in keeping her secret. But she's a woman, and she loves him. And it's not easy. She nearly tells him. She nearly gives it away. She talks to him about love. When Orsino says to her, you look like somebody must have felt love at some point, and Viola, well, a little bit. Well, what was the woman like? Of your complexion. She looks like you. She's not worthy then. What years of faith? About your age. Too old. Let still the woman take an elder than herself. So wears she to him, so sways she level in her husband's heart. When a woman marries a man, she's got to turn herself into what the man wants. As I say, it was written 400 years ago. Let your love be younger than yourself, or thy affection cannot hold the bent. For women are as roses, whose fair flower, being once displayed, doth fall that very hour. Very, very strange attitude towards women. She's heartbroken. And he, on the other hand, is somewhat hedonistic concerning how a woman should behave when she's a wife. Viola only sees the object of her desire. She doesn't see his bad side. She doesn't see his selfishness. She doesn't see the hedonism. She only sees that thing she believes she loves. Each of them, Feste's song remains true. Present mirth has present laughter. What is there in front of you is what you feel, what you love, what your emotions react to. She comes so close to telling him. My father had a daughter, loved a man. As it might be, perhaps, were I a woman, I should, your lordship. Dangerously close. She goes on. She never told her love, but let concealment, like the worm in the bud, feed on her damask cheek. She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy, she sat like patience on a monument, smiling at grief. Was not this love indeed? And even Viola has fallen victim to it. She's fallen victim to the idea of love. She describes herself as patience on a monument, sitting, fading away, pining away for a love that can never... All she has to do is say, look, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, and I love you. She doesn't say that. There's a kind of enjoyment in the melancholy of it. And Orsino buys this story. Died thy sister of her love, my boy? I am all the daughters of my father's house, and all the brothers too, and yet I know not. Sir, shall I go to the lady? How sad that question is. There she is, telling him straight into his face, I love you, but not straight into his face, still disguised, still hidden. And so the play progresses, and the plot builds and thickens. Olivia meets Sebastian and thinks it's Cesario, and brings him home, and marries him. Sebastian doesn't even question it. Beautiful, rich, determined woman wants him, and he, being a man, just said, yeah, okay, great, wonderful, oh, wow. Antonio feels abandoned by the man he's given his love and money to, and is denied by that man, or so he thinks he is, because he mistakes Cesario, Viola, for Sebastian. Twins are a wonderful device. You can do so much when you've got twins on the stage. Orsino accuses Cesario of betrayal. Cesario denies marrying Olivia. The priest confirms the marriage took place. Sebastian turns up, and Olivia discovers her mistake and doesn't really care, because she's got a good-looking husband. Love? What? Orsino discovers the true identity of Cesario, and realizes that all that talk of love by the boy was actually a declaration of love by Viola, a girl, for him. So he immediately decides to marry him, her, the girl. It's confusing, isn't it? And it's absurd. And there's nothing of true relationships in the play. It's all smoke and mirrors. The whole play is a game of what is love? A game of loving that is in fact a satire on the games we play, because our love is so often far more about ourselves and how we feel than of the people we desire to fulfill our requirements. I'm back to that song again. What is love? It is not hereafter. Pleasant mirth has present laughter. What's to come is still unsure. Enjoy it while you've got it, because it's not real. It's flim-flam. In delay there lies no plenty. If we don't do it now, we never will. Then come kiss me, sweet and 20. Youth's a stuff will not endure. In other words, and very cynically, get it while you can. The play is entitled Twelfth Night. which was in deference to when it was planned to present it on Twelfth Night after Christmas, I think in 1603 or something. But the subtitle of the play is much more interesting. The subtitle of the play is "What You Will, Whatever You Like." It's very telling. Now, next week, I'm going to discuss the other aspect of the play because, as I said, it's one of Shakespeare's most complex comedies. And there is a whole subplot that runs right through the play, I'm sure you know of it, which is the story of Sir Toby Belch, Maria, Sir Andrew Aguecheek, Feste, and the much maligned Malvolio. So that's what I'm going to talk about next week, that whole line of development of this subplot, which beautifully mirrors this whole question of love and self-love, but from a much crueler, on a much crueler basis. A couple of questions. Yes, exactly. Yes, that question that Viola asks, excellently done if God did all, concerning Olivia's beauty. How much of your beauty comes from God and how much of it comes from your makeup and your jewelry? It is I love it because out of the boy's mouth comes the most bitchy woman's comment. What do you think? Do you think I'm lovely? Yeah, I think you're lovely. Yeah. Who did you make up? It's a beauty. I mean, 400 years later, we still say things like that. Well, I don't. Farewell, fair cruelty. The cruelty of courtly love is mirrored in the real cruelty of the Malvolio plot, and absolutely, and that's what I will be addressing next week. The cruelty of courtly love, the game of courtly love, the absurdities, and the lengths we will go to, which is the way they play on Malvolio. Do I consider Antonio the merchant who hangs around with handsome young men as the same Antonio the merchant who hangs around with young men in Merchant of Venice? Yes, Dennis, I think that is exactly spot on. I don't know why he keeps using the name Antonio, but to me, there is that homoerotic element of it. Shakespeare was perfectly aware of it. I mean, it was going on. I think it was, there's nothing new in that. And it is throughout Shakespeare, you find that. It's interesting that Antonio and his care and concern for a young man is balanced perfectly in Twelfth Night by Antonio and his care and concern for a young man. So it is unquestionably a homosexual attraction, to my mind. People may argue, but that's what I think. And I think it's not merely the word love, but the word adore that tells us that quite specifically. So as I say, that's it for this week. Thank you all for being there. Grace has a question there. Do you think Shakespeare played with the theme of rejection within the game along with the game? Journey's End in Lovers Meeting. Yeah, Journey's End in Lovers Meeting is a very good point. In that song, in that, yes, what he's sort of saying is we go through all these complexities and absurdities and stupidities and games that we play, but eventually it does come to a conclusion. And the conclusion that Shakespeare brings it to in this particular play is to have people marry, which is usually the way these things end up. I mean, it happens in Measure for Measure, where the Duke suddenly announces he's going to marry Isabella without even asking her. So it is it's part of a game. It's part of that game, that process that is used. And because it is a comedy, it must conclude. It must tie itself up. It has to come a full circle. And the full circle of this is that people get to marry the people you expect they're going to marry. Viola gets to marry not Cesario, but the mirror image of Cesario. So the journey's end in Lovers Meeting, yes, it is the right natural conclusion for this particular farcical structure, to my mind. Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you. Yeah, so that's it for this week. Thank you all for being here. Next week, as I say, we were looking at the other plot of Twelfth Night and the unfortunate Malvolio. In the meantime, let me remind you, Christmas is coming, and that means the PICT Classic Theatre online radio version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol will be coming soon. There'll be more information about it. You can find it on Instagram, you can find it on Facebook. All our social media is talking about it. And that will be online in mid-December, right through to New Year's Eve. And we all hope that you'll buy into that one. And the other thing being, our fall campaign for fundraising is still active. Terribly important. If you can help us, please do. Every donation counts. I say it every week. Every dollar counts. And as you know, we're very limited in what we can actually sell in terms of tickets. So your donations really matter. If everybody who tunes in sends $10, that will help considerably. And if you do the same next week, that would help considerably too. But in the meantime, thank you all for being with me again. I hope you love the flowers. And we'll see you all next week. Bless you. Bye now.